Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, October 25th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. We had a great show on Sunday, so we're going to be rebroadcasting it on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, throughout the week. So on yesterday's show, we talked a little bit about the documentary airing on MSNBC called Civil War, The Roots of Our Division. Civil War, The Roots of Our Division. And, we talk a lot about the Civil War Reconstruction here on this show, Jim Crow era, what happened after slavery ended. And I also teach a 10-week online course dealing with from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. So the documentary was airing while our show was on the air on Sunday. So I did not get a chance to see it until after our show was over with. So I've gone through and watched it twice. We're going to talk about it some on today's show, and throughout the week, we're going to deal with different aspects of the documentary. Okay, so did you see it on MSNBC? Is also streaming on Peacock, the NBC streaming service is also streaming on Peacock. It's called Civil War, The Roots of Our Division. And one of the things that they talked about different aspects of the Civil War and how, depending upon which region of the country you live in, the way the Civil War was taught in your school was different. And they talked about the lost cause, which we've dealt with before on this show. They talked about some different aspects of the Civil War, which we've talked about here previously on this show. But one of the things they dealt with, and we're going to talk about tonight, is the myth of the happy slave. The myth of the happy slave. And they dealt with how one of the biggest pieces of propaganda regarding the Civil War is the movie Gone with the Wind. The movie Gone with the Wind. Okay, Clark Gable, and we know you had Hattie McDaniels, and Hattie McDaniels wins an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. I think it was in 1939. And Butterfly McQueen, the movie Gone with the Wind. And this movie Gone with the Wind romanticized slavery, but also romanticized the South and the aristocracy and the genteel life of the South, the Southern wealthy plantation owners who had happy slaves, things like this. Okay, so we're going to talk some about that. Did you see the documentary Civil War, The Roots of Our Division? We're going to discuss it some. Give us a call, 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600. If you saw it, what'd you think about it? We're going to talk about different aspects of it throughout the week. And one of the people featured in the documentary is one of my friends, Dr. Greg Carr, chair of the Afro-American Studies Department at Howard University. I didn't even know he was going to be in the documentary. I was watching it, and there at Howard University, I see Greg. I said, man, I need to call Greg, because I said, I want to get him back on the show also. We've had him on the show before. But he's a panelist every Thursday on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm on every Friday on Roland Martin Unfiltered, usually every Friday. But Dr. Greg Carr did a really good job, of course, in the documentary as well. Okay, now, one of the things they talked about in the documentary, we dealt with in class on Saturday. My class from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. They talked about the Clinton, Mississippi massacre of 1875. And I didn't even know they were going to talk about it in the documentary. We dealt with that on Saturday in the class. So we'll talk some about the Clinton, Mississippi massacre on tomorrow's show. But one of the things we're going to talk about today is the anniversary of the St. Bernard Parish massacre in Louisiana, the St. Bernard Parish massacre in Louisiana during Reconstruction, October 25th, 1868. October 25th, 1868. Okay, so we're going to discuss that some on today's show as well. All right, now on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can sign up for the email newsletter there as well. Okay, visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can sign up for the 10-week online course that I teach on Saturdays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We do the classes live, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All the sessions are archived, recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. So as soon as you register, you can watch the class we just did this past Saturday. Okay, that's from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power. Okay, I want to jump into this first topic here. So I think overall it was a good documentary. One of the things they did was they were on location in different cities. So part of it was in Mississippi, and they were at a high school in Mississippi and dealing with how the history of slavery is taught in Mississippi. And then at one point they're in Washington, D.C. at Howard University. So they're in the South for part of the documentary. They're up north for part of the documentary. Okay. And I want to go to this clip here. Squeeze this in before we go to break. I want to go to this clip here. This is from Morning Joe, MSNBC. We're going to go to clip 1 here in just a second, Shakita. This is from Morning Joe on MSNBC. They interviewed the director and the producer of the documentary. They interviewed Rachel Boynton and Erica Dilday. Okay. Erica is the producer. Rachel is the director. Rachel is white. Erica is African-American. This is the documentary Civil War, The Roots of Our Division. And this documentary looks at how Americans tell their version of the Civil War, how Americans tell their version of the Civil War and its legacy of slavery and racism. Now, we know the Civil War was 1861 to 1865, and the South secedes from the Union. The first state to secede from the Union is South Carolina, December 20th, 1860. And this is about 6 weeks after Abraham Lincoln becomes president-elect. And he is of the Republican Party, which is a newly formed political party formed just 6 years prior in 1854 to be the counter to the Democratic Party at the time. And the Republican Party was made up largely of groups of abolitionists. All right. The executive producers on the film are Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. and actor Brad Pitt. Okay, let's go to this clip, Shakita. Okay, clip number 1.
Who we are as a nation.
I don't think that slavery and the Civil War and Jim Crow should be forgotten.
You don't really hear the word slavery or slaves from Mississippi. I guess the simple term is whitewash.
You're telling stories that aren't true about my ancestors.
We all should learn the real history because we think we know, but we don't.
That was a look at a new Peacock original documentary on how the story of the Civil War is told across the nation. The film travels to classrooms in different states to investigate how the legacy of slavery and racism are taught. The documentary, entitled Civil War, premieres this Sunday at 10 p.m. Eastern right here on MSNBC. And joining us now, the film's writer, director, and producer, three-time Emmy nominee Rachel Boynton, and producer Erica Dilday. And it's good to have you both with us. Rachel, I'll start with you. Why this film now?
Well, we started this film back in 2015. We started shooting in January of 2017, and it was prompted by the massacre in South Carolina at the Emmanuel AME Church. After that, I really started thinking about why it was that a portion of our country didn't believe that the war was about slavery. I hadn't been aware of that ahead of time. I didn't grow up in the South. And I decided to go to classrooms to look at how the war was being taught across the country. What were our children learning about their national narrative?
You know, there's this wonderful moment in the film with Professor David Blight at Yale, and he talks about the lost cause actually winning. Talk a little bit about what it means to tell that story, that a certain narrative of the Civil War that in some ways redeems the South has in some ways won out and defined how we understand that horrific moment in the country's history.
Yeah, Blight talks about how the taking over of that narrative actually took quite a bit of time after the war. We are prone to believe the stories we want to believe in this country. You can see it happening now after the insurrection on January 6th. You can see a new narrative emerging very quickly now. It's not taking as long as it used to with social media. But our tendency to want to create a story that feels good, or for the people in power to create a story that feels good to them, that's not new.
So, Erica, this is obviously a subject that has taken on added focus with the debate over critical race theory and this idea of what should be taught in our nation's schools. As you know, you guys put together this project. What are you seeing? Why are you surprised that this particular one? It's certainly so timely. This has yet become such a political flashpoint, and certainly on the right, people have really embraced it.
It doesn't actually surprise me. One of the things that I find most interesting is that people want to forget. They want to pretend that there were a lot of things that didn't happen. And it's hard for people to admit the evil and brutality that was part of this country's history and continues today.
Erica, I had the unique experience of growing up in the North in New Jersey and learning a version of what happened in the Civil War, and then going to college in the South to a really good school with very well-educated people. And I found that many of my friends and classmates from the South had a completely different view of what happened in the Civil War. There was a sense of pride about the Confederacy. There was talk of the War of Northern Aggression. So what do you find? That was almost 30 years ago. What did you find now as you set to make this film about how the war is being taught in the South today?
It's still very much the same from what I can see. And in fact, it's a point of pain for a lot of Southerners, Black Southerners, because they know that these are lies, and white Southerners because they don't want to admit the truth of what happened. I have been surprised to hear how many people still say slavery wasn't that bad for the slaves. Slaves were well taken care of, and this is this decade. People are still saying this.
So in this clip from the documentary, a Mississippi professor recounts her family's history with racism and why she's trying to change the future.
I grew up in a family in Mississippi. My dad was from New York. My mom's family was from South Mississippi. 90% white, 10% black, still segregated in the ways in which people in the communities live. But I was raised in a racist family, racist community at the time in which I grew up. Things have changed in a good bit now, but for me, I think they want to repeat that I feel responsibility with the profession that I've chosen to tell things accurately and to not repeat generational and correctness with my own family. I want to do something different.
What's so powerful about that moment, at least for me, is it captures the intimacy of our hatreds. There's a sense in which it is rooted in our families, it's rooted in our loved ones. She puts up the marker in Clinton, Mississippi, to mark 1875, an act of extraordinary violence. We think about 1898 in the Wilmington Massacre, but 1875, why was that such an important moment for you in this film? Because it was a powerful moment in the film, at least for me.
Shakita, pause it right there. Pause it right there. Okay, we're coming up on the break. We're going to continue this on the other side of the break. They left off with the Clinton, Mississippi massacre of 1875, and that's shown. They talk about that in the documentary. We're going to talk about the Clinton, Mississippi massacre on Tuesday's show. I talked about it on Saturday in my online class. We're coming up on the break. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. You can give us a call, 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. Did you see the documentary Civil War on MSNBC? What you think about it? Do you have any questions regarding the documentary, etc.? You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. Superstation and Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by. How's everybody doing? All right. Who still needs to register for the 10-week online course that I teach on Saturdays from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968? You probably have never seen anything like this class. Okay, stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. How's everybody doing? We're going to post a link here so you can register for the class. It's also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Now, as soon as you register, you can watch the class we just did this past Saturday, because we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived. So even like next year, you can go back and watch the full course. How you doing, Greg? Greg Osborne. The class is regularly $130. Is on sale right now, $70. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And we have it right on the homepage of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. So next class is going to be Saturday, October 30th. We do it 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Stand by.
Network show, we deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Unfortunately, many people confuse what racism is. Racism is a power structure. It was laws and policies that put us in this predicament. It's going to be laws and policies that take us out. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the compass of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know.
We have it all on 910 AM Superstation. 910, the Superstation, Detroit's only African-American talk radio.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, October 25th, 2021, and we are live. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, be sure to email me at TheAHNShow at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAHNShow at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, your church. We know Kwanzaa is coming up, Christmas is coming up, Dr. King Day, Black History Month, etc. So contact me now so we can get those things scheduled, because I already got my first booking to speak for Black History Month in February. Okay, right before the break, we were talking about the documentary that aired on Sunday, October 24th, 10 p.m. On MSNBC. It's also streaming on Peacock, which is their streaming service. It's called Civil War, The Roots of Our Division. Civil War, The Roots of Our Division. Did you see the documentary? What did you think about it? I think it was interesting that they focused on high schools, and they were also at Howard University up north, but they were at a high school in Mississippi dealing with how the history of the Civil War and Reconstruction is taught. And one of the things that was talked about is that how, and they also went to a meeting of this pretty much senior citizens in Mississippi, and it was a meeting where they were talking about the Civil War, things like that. But a lot of people said that when it came to Reconstruction, very little time was spent in school talking about the Reconstruction period, which is extremely important because that deals with bringing the South back into the Union, rebuilding the South, integrating African Americans into society as well, into and gaining rights, some acquiring land, but integrating them into different aspects of society. This is the Reconstruction period, 1865 to 1877. Okay, and you're going to have the Freedmen's Bureau, the U.S. Bureau of Freedmen, Refugees, and Abandoned Lands. You're going to have the Freedmen's Bank, which collapses in 1874. It's not properly funded, undermanaged. We know at one point towards the end, Frederick Douglass is put in charge of the Freedmen's Bank. He invests thousands. He puts thousands of dollars of his own money into the Freedmen's Bank to try to prop it up. But we're going to end up losing about $2.9 million worth of our deposits in the Freedmen's Bank. Just very quick recap. We're going to go back to the clip, Shakita, just a second here. Just back it up about 30 seconds or a minute. Quick recap on the Civil War. The Civil War in the U.S. began in 1861, actually starts April 12, 1861 with the attack on Fort Sumter in South Carolina. After decades of simmering tensions between northern and southern states over slavery, states' rights, and westward expansion, the election of Abraham Lincoln in November 1860, when he becomes president-elect, caused 7 southern states to secede from the Union and form the CSA, Confederate States of America. 4 more states are soon going to join. When Lincoln gives his inaugural address, March 4th, 1861, he says that he has no intention of ending slavery in states where slavery already exists, because he's trying to stop more states from seceding from the Union. He's trying to keep the Union together. And the Civil War was not fought to free the slaves. The Civil War was fought to bring the South back into the Union, keep the Union together. After the Emancipation Proclamation of January 1st, 1863, the purpose of fighting the Civil War is going to shift from keeping the Union together to freeing the slaves. And this is going to cause backlash like the July 1863 New York City draft riots, which we talked about last week before last in my class, the New York City draft riots. Okay, where poor white men are revolting against having to be drafted in the Civil War, and now you're talking about freeing the slaves, and they're saying the slaves are going to take our jobs, and they're killing African Americans, they're destroying businesses, attacking federal property. It reminds you of the January 6th insurrection, that 1863, July 1863 New York City draft riot. There was also a draft riot in Detroit, and there's also one in Boston. Okay. So then in March of 1863, during the Civil War, there was a big race riot here in Detroit in 1863. We know there was one in 1943 during World War II. There was also one in 1863 during the Civil War as well. We may talk about that later this week. So the Civil War, the war between the states, as the Civil War was also known, ended in Confederate surrender, April 9th, 1865. General Robert E. Lee surrenders to Ulysses S. Grant at the Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. And this, for all practical purposes, ends the U.S. Civil War. The conflict was the costliest and deadliest war ever fought on American soil, with some 620,000 of the 2.4 million soldiers killed, millions more injured, and much of the South left in ruin. There were a lot of poor, destitute white people after the Civil War ended, and one of the things that the U.S. Bureau of Freedmen, Refugees, and Abandoned Lands was doing, or the U.S. Freedmen's Bureau, one of the things they were doing was also, in addition to helping African Americans, former slaves, they were also helping poor, destitute white people as well. Okay. All right. Let's go back to this clip, Shakita.
Extraordinary violence. We think about 1898 and the Wilmington Massacre, but 1875, why was that such an important moment for you in this film? Because it was a powerful moment in the film, at least for me as I watched it.
That story was essential to have in the film. It was very hard to figure out how to film silence. There's a lot of silence in this country around very important events. And knowing what image you can capture, who you can talk to in order to make those silences felt and real, I was very lucky to find Melissa Jones and to be able to tell the story of that marker, because it clarifies what has been denied, the violence, the white violence that has been denied over time.
Erica, I'm wondering what your best hope, and you can continue with your thought as well as you answer this, but what young people in America will take away from this film.
I think one of the things that they will take away, hopefully, is very simple, that if we don't understand our history, then we're doomed to repeat it. And also that we will never be able to heal and to come together as a nation if we don't talk about the issues that have divided us and talk about them honestly and openly. We just don't do that.
Rachel Boynton and Erica Dilday, thank you both very, very much for being on this morning and for doing this. The documentary Civil War premieres this Sunday at 10 p.m. Eastern on MSNBC and is streaming right now on Peacock. Thank you both very much.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Shakita. Okay. So you can stop the clip. Okay. All right. So that's from Morning Joe. Is it? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's from Morning Joe, MSNBC. That is from Friday, October 22nd. 2021. The name of that clip is A Point of Pain. A Point of Pain for a Lot of Southerners. Doc looks at how Americans frame their Civil War stories. A point of pain for a lot of Southerners. Now, one of the things that was talked about in the movie, and I thought it was very interesting, they actually showed a clip of it. We're going to go to clip 2 in just a second here, Shakita. They showed a clip of from Gone with the Wind. Okay. And from my understanding, this is probably the most watched movie in history. And Birth of a Nation may be right behind it. I'm not sure. Because Birth of a Nation, February 8th, 1915, Birth of a Nation from D.W. Griffith, was also talked about in the film as well, because that movie takes place during slavery, the Civil War, and Reconstruction. Okay. And that movie helps to basically rejuvenates the Ku Klux Klan, because the second incarnation of the Ku Klux Klan is going to be created in October of 1915 by the Reverend William Joseph Simmons, who sees the movie Birth of a Nation and is inspired to rejuvenate the Ku Klux Klan. Okay. He was a Christian minister, so-called Christian minister, and he rejuvenates the Ku Klux Klan. Okay. One of the things they talk about in the film is the movie Gone with the Wind, and how the movie Gone with the Wind promotes the myth of the happy slave, the kind slave owner, and it promotes these stereotypes. Okay. And something else that they hit on in the documentary is people, and it was Dr. It was an African American female professor. Her name will come to me in a minute. I think it was Erica Jackson. They talk about how some white people go to plantations where, like, they have plantation tours and things like this in the South. Some white people go to plantations to get married. Some white people go to plantations to get married, and one of the things they dealt with in the film is how, in the documentary, is how they would have these tours of Southern plantations where slaves were owned. But slavery is not really talked about on these tours on Southern plantations where slaves were owned. And you have some white people who will get married at these plantations because of this myth, because of this lost cause myth, and these revisionist history from movies like Gone with the Wind that romanticize slavery, romanticize the antebellum South before the Civil War. And you have, images of belles, the female belle, and Southern gentlemen, and things like this. And they showed a scene from Gone with the Wind that showed the white children on the plantation, the white children laying in the bed, and it was a African American slave child with some leaves they were using as a fan to fan them while they are asleep. Okay, now I've seen Gone with the Wind before. It was a long time ago. My mom watched the movie and I watched it. This is years ago. I may have seen it. I know I've seen it once. I don't know if I've seen it twice, because I don't watch a lot of slave movies. But I don't remember that scene in the movie, but they showed it in the documentary. Okay. And one of the things they dealt with in the film was this myth of the happy slave. Okay, now when we look at very quickly here, when we look at Reconstruction, let me pull this other clip up here, this other segment. When we look at Reconstruction, then we're going to go to this clip here, this second clip. Reconstruction is 1865 to 1877. And the Civil War destroyed the institution of slavery and ensured the survival of the Union, and set in motion economic and political changes that laid the foundation for the modern nation, wrote historian Eric Foner in his book, Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863 to 1877. During Reconstruction, the United States made its first attempt to build an egalitarian society on the ashes of slavery. In the documentary, Dr. Greg Carr, my friend Dr. Greg Carr, chair of the Afro-American Studies Department at Howard University, he said that Reconstruction was a period of time when African Americans were showing white people how to have a democracy, how to have a real democracy. And we know there's about 2,000, because we're voting during Reconstruction. Okay. We know even before the 15th Amendment of 1870 is ratified in 1870, some of us are voting. African American men are voting, and we elect about 2,000 African American men to elected office throughout the South. Okay, and some in the North also. In South Carolina, the majority of the state legislature in South Carolina during Reconstruction is going to be African American men. We know you're going to have Hiram Rhodes Revels, who was a U.S. senator from Mississippi. Okay, he gets appointed in 1870. Okay, Hiram Rhodes Revels, and now you have actually, there's this piece from the Zen Education Project, because October 16th was the anniversary of African Americans joining the House of Representatives. Okay, I'm going to pull this up here from the Zen Education Project. But all this, they deal with these different aspects in the documentary. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. But Dr. Greg Carr dealt with how Reconstruction was a period of time where African Americans are showing white people how to have a real democracy. And we're gaining rights. You have the 1866, the Civil Rights Act of 1866. You have the 14th Amendment of 14th Amendment of 1868, 15th Amendment 1870. Okay, October 19th, 1870, first African Americans elected to House of Representatives, October 19th, 1870. And then you're going to have Hiram Rhodes Revels, who gets appointed to the U.S. Senate, because it wasn't until about 1913 and 1914 that people started voting for U.S. senators. Prior to that, for about the first 104 years, it's the state legislature that is appointing U.S. senators. Okay, people didn't vote for U.S. senators originally. October 19th, 1870, first African Americans elected to the House of Representatives. And this is something that's talked about in the documentary, because it deals with the Reconstruction period. And then after Reconstruction ends in 1877 with the Compromise of 1877, where the Republicans and the Democrats conspire to let Rutherford B. Hayes become president, because neither Rutherford B. Hayes nor Samuel J. Tilden, who is the Democratic candidate, have enough electoral college votes to become president. So there's a backroom deal made where the Democrats say that they'll let Rutherford B. Hayes become president if he removes the Union troops out of the South, the remaining Union troops out of the South. And he does this. Okay, removes them out of Louisiana and South Carolina, the remaining Union troops out of the South, that allow the white supremacists in the South to take back full control of the South and the political structure. And then you're going to start seeing in 1890, 1895, 1898, 1901, you're going to see them rewriting their state constitutions to codify white supremacy. Before they start rewriting the state constitutions, you're going to see them in segregating schools, segregating in the 1880s, segregating schools, segregating streetcars, public accommodations, things like this. Then you're going to see the rewriting of the state constitutions. 1890 Mississippi, 1895 South Carolina, 1898 Louisiana. In Louisiana, when they rewrite their state constitution, they institute a 9-3 majority in the for felony convictions. Okay, Louisiana. When they rewrite their state constitution, we talked about this in the class the previous time I taught the class. We dealt with this. So in Louisiana, African Americans could sit on juries. Okay, African Americans could sit on juries. So what they did in Louisiana in the state constitution is that instead of you having to be convicted by a 12-0 a unanimous jury, like for a felony conviction, instead of you being convicted unanimously, to nullify a small number of African Americans on a jury, they wrote into the Louisiana state constitution a 9-3 majority. So if you are accused of a crime, and you go, say you're accused of murder, and you go to trial, and it's 3 African Americans on the jury, and they say he's not guilty, but 9 white people say he's guilty, you're found guilty. That was written into the Louisiana State Constitution of 1898. This piece right here from Equal Justice Initiative, EJI.org. Louisiana disenfranchises Black voters and jurors, May 12, 1898. Okay. And that 9-3 majority rule in Louisiana stayed in effect until about 20 it was changed decades later to a 10 majority. Okay. And then it was just changed to a 12-0 unanimous ruling in 2018. The 1898 Louisiana Constitution also eliminated the requirement of unanimous jury verdicts, allowing as much as a 9-3 split to still stand as a conviction, allowing as much as a 9-3 split to stand as a conviction. Because the U.S. Constitution now prevented states from wholly barring African Americans from jury service, this provision was enacted to render small numbers of Black jurors inconsequential. This was written. It's after Reconstruction ends. The white supremacists are rewriting the state constitutions, legalizing poll taxes, literacy tests. In some cases, property requirements. Okay, in I think it was Louisiana in their state constitution, they're saying that you also have to own property. Okay, they're codifying white supremacy into these state constitutions. This provision was enacted to render small numbers of black jurors inconsequential. Thomas Seams, a former Confederate senator and head of the convention's jury committee, praised the provision for success in its goal, quote, to establish the supremacy of the white race in this state to the extent to which it could be legally and constitutionally done, end quote. When you go read their statements that they're making at their state constitutions, they're talking about codifying white supremacy. They're saying they're doing this to exclude the Negro, like in Mississippi, like White County Judge Solomon Saladin Calhoun said in 1890 at their state convention to rewrite the state constitution. He said we are here to exclude the Negro. But they talk about how they're doing this to codify white supremacy. Quote, to establish the supremacy of the white race in this state to the extent to which it could be legally and constitutionally done, end quote. The 1898 Louisiana Constitution eliminated federally enforced voting rules that enfranchised black men in Louisiana during Reconstruction. As a result, the number of black registered voters dropped from 130,000 before the new Constitution to just 5,000 by 1900. Okay, so the new Constitution went into effect in 1898 Louisiana. Prior to 98, you had 130,000 registered African-American voters. 2 years later, 1900, you got 5,000 registered African-American voters. By 1904, the number had dropped to just 1,000. This is after the Compromise of 1877, which ends Reconstruction. Throughout the southern states, disenfranchisement laws targeted black communities for generations. For generations. Louisiana's 1898 Constitution was revised slightly in 1913, but most of the restrictive language remained until 1972. The non-unanimous jury rule remained in effect for more than a century, meaning that to be convicted of a felony, you don't have to have a unanimous jury. It doesn't have to be 12. It could be 9. Okay? Until Louisiana voters approved a constitutional amendment to abolish it in November 2018. They changed it decades later to a 10-2 majority. You could still be found guilty of a felony. It wasn't changed until a unanimous ruling by the jury, 12-0, until November 2018. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth upon resources and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. This is a legacy of slavery, Jim Crow segregation, racism, white supremacy, coded into the laws. This was in Louisiana. Louisiana also has one of the highest poverty rates in the country. Louisiana is also where Angola prison is. Louisiana is also where Angola prison is as well. Okay, now I want to go to this second clip here. Now, this is from the Golden Girls, okay? This is from the Golden Girls, and this was, you remember Blanche on the Golden Girls. Blanche was from the South, and her family would former slave owners, plantation owners, things like this. And this is a debate. Don Cheadle is on the Golden Girls, but I don't think we knew who Don Cheadle was back then in the 80s. But this is a debate over the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia that people call the Confederate flag. Okay, it's not the Confederate flag, it's the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army. The flag that's on the Dukes of Hazzard car, okay, General Lee, that's the name of the car, named after white supremacist slave owner who committed treason against the Union to fight against the Union. That flag, there were 3 flags that flew over the Confederate States of America from 1861 to 1865. That flag that's on the General Lee car was not one of those flags. Let's go to this clip, Shakita. It's clip 2. It's on Facebook. Okay.
Oh, wait up. You're not hanging that flag in here.
Well, of course I am.
Blanche, do you know what this flag represents?
This flag belonged to Big Granddaddy Hollingsworth. He used to bring it to all our fine old Southern family picnics where all the cousins would gather. Everybody was courteous and mannerly, and gentlemen would ask ladies for the favor of a dance. And Cousin Rex would be home on vacation from Colonel Bob's school for bad boys.
Now I get it. This is just good old-fashioned fun.
Yeah.
Okay, well, say, how about on Tuesday nights we hang the Nazi flag, hire an oompa band, and dress you up like Eva Braun?
This is not the same as the Nazi flag.
Yeah, well, it is to me, Blanche. But when you look at this flag, you see some Southern fairy tale with a guy who looks like Burl Ives dressed in a white suit, tipping his hat to you, saying, "Evening, Miss Blanche."
Evening. Sorry, Roland, you were making a point.
That's not funny, Blanche.
Well, that's ancient history, and you know it. Things aren't like that anymore.
You did the right thing, Ron.
I did? I did the right thing. I did?
Yeah. Sometimes what you believe is more important than business. Although what some people believe is unbelievable.
Now, Roland, I am not some kind of bigot because I love this flag and I resent that implication. You just stop that right now.
Oh, yes, ma'am, Miss Devereaux. Oh, Roland don't want to cause you no trouble at all.
You hold on to that one. He's a good one. What did you say?
He's a good one.
Roland, wait. Hey, Roland, I don't feel like that woman in there. I don't feel that way at all.
But can't you see, Blanche, that flag ties what you believe and what she believes together. Look, I'm telling you, the legacy of that flag is alive every time I walk down the street with a group of my friends and I see a white person cross over to the other side because they're afraid. Or look, when I'm in the elevator with somebody like you and you're all huddled over in the corner wondering what I'm going to do, sometimes I just want to go, just to break the tension. So please don't tell me about that flag. I've battled that flag all my life.
Look, Roland, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything you've been through, but what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to think about all my family, all my friends? All right. When I was in school, maybe I was a little less sensitive than I could have been. Yeah, but I was just doing what all my friends were doing. They were my friends. And we were just acting like everybody we knew acted. Oh. When I had my first baby, well, the hospital was packed, and I had to share a room with a young black woman. George made a big stink about the accommodation. She had to have heard him. I know her baby was as cute as mine. Cuter, in fact. Rebecca was an ugly baby. Turned out fine. Ugly baby. You can get an idea of how she looked if you catch Sophia some morning with her teeth out. The point is, what am I supposed to do and think about my family now? What am I supposed to think about all those people I love? What am I supposed to think about me? Everything I grew up believing in, all my wonderful memories, but they're all tarnished now by the truth. I owe you an apology.
No.
Will you stay?
Blanche, you really have to start listening to me when I tell you something is bothering me. And I'll try to understand why some of these things mean so much to you. Look, the whole world is messed up right now, and I would like to see that get better. But in order for that to happen, white people are going to have to start making positive assumptions when they see people of color. And people of color could make positive assumptions when they see white people.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that was from the Golden Girls from the 80s. I got to look at the exact date. I'm not sure. But that ties into the attachment to the Confederate battle flag, which is attached for some people who grew up in the South to memories of stories they heard from their father, grandfather, great grandfather, their families attached to their family, also is tied to how that family may have treated African Americans or what they said about African Americans when we weren't around, things like that. All that can be connected. And for many people, when you start dealing with the truth and the real history of slavery and the real history of the Civil War, why it was fought, things like this, it causes a conflict with, okay, now how do I look at my family? How do I look at my mother, father, especially if they're still alive? How do I look at my family? And so this is why the real history has to be taught. This is why you hear me say numerous times, America must have a massive history lesson. America must have a massive history lesson. Okay, those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to keep going for a few more minutes. Be sure to visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. If you like this type of information, you register for the 10-week online course that I teach on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. So a couple of the slides that I showed are from the class, because I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. We do this 12 noon to 2 p.m. on Saturdays. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived. You can go back and watch it anytime. You can see me. I can't see you. There's a live chat in the class also, so you can ask questions. As soon as you register, you can watch the class we just did this past Saturday. Okay, we're going to keep going for a few more minutes here. We'll continue this discussion on Tuesday's show, because tomorrow we'll talk about the Clinton, Mississippi massacre of 1875, which they talked about in the documentary. I want to get into the segment here dealing with happy slaves here in just a minute. Okay, right now, let's correct wrong behavior. Is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. Okay, stand by, everybody. Stand by. Also, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $, the AHN show through Cash App, $, the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me /the AHN show, paypal.me /the AHN show. We're here six days a week. Almost said 7. Now we're here 6 days a week. And so let's keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, etc. And when you do it through Cash App, our official Cash App account is $, the AHN show, SHOW. It'll say Michael and show my picture there. These other ones here are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. Okay. So this is our official one. I just posted the link here so you can register for the class. Okay. If you need me to post it again, let me know. But you can also visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and it's right on the homepage of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. The class I teach on, let me see, hold on, that's the wrong link. Let's see, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll post it right here. Okay, the class I teach on Sundays is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, Kemet being one of the original names for Egypt. So we do this one on Sundays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And we do thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Next class is Sunday, October 31st, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Same format. And we do the sessions live. All the sessions are recorded. And we deal with ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, Nile Valley region of Africa, 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And we deal with the transatlantic slave trade. The second class, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, that class basically picks up where the first class, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, leaves off, because there was so much information that I have to cover in the class. I couldn't do it all in the first one. In the way that 1865 to 1968 needs to be dealt with, I need to go through in each class, analyze about a 10-year period of history. So I created that second class so we could go in and do more analysis of that crucial period of time. Okay, so you can register for this one as well. All right, let's continue here. I want to deal with this myth about the happy slave, and we may talk about this some more on tomorrow's show also. There's a good piece from history.com that deals with some myths about slavery. Okay, some myths about slavery. And we're going to reference that some here. And also we'll may look at this tomorrow. Okay. And then during the week, we'll also look at some myths about Reconstruction, because Reconstruction is not talked about a lot. The history of Reconstruction is not talked about a lot. And that's a really crucial period of time. Okay. So there's a good article from history.com, was the official website of the History Channel. The most damaging myths about slavery debunked. The most damaging myths about slavery debunked. And let me pull this up here. And in the documentary, you heard a lot of these myths about slavery and people trying to, especially a lot of white people in the South, trying to discount the severity of slavery or how America benefited from slavery, even if you had white people who didn't own slaves. Okay. Only about a quarter of the white people in the South owned slaves, but there were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. They're not just producing cotton, they're producing coffee, tobacco. They're producing all different types of crops that are being sold and sold in stores, and people are consuming. They're producing vegetation and growing livestock, all these things. So even if people didn't own slaves, they still benefited from the crops and the products and things like this that slaves are producing. And they're building, and white people are building businesses around this also. Okay. And then you look at the insurance companies that take out insurance policies on slave ships, but also on slaves on the plantations. So if we look at this here, and what you see when you study this, you're going to see how slave labor contributed to the economy. Okay. Contributed to the GDP of this country. This article is from May 3rd, 2018. I want to go quickly here to myth number, I think this is myth number 2. Okay. Weren't some slaves happy to be taken care of? Weren't some slaves happy to be taken care of? Now, this also ties into stereotypes of African Americans and caricatures, because the South is presenting this distorted image of slavery where the slaves were childlike and naive and couldn't take care of themselves. So the benevolent slave master takes care of them, and they're almost like part of the family. And this is depicted in the movie The Birth of a Nation, which is on YouTube. Okay, it's a 3-hour silent movie. It debuts February 8th, 1915, directed by D.W. Griffith. The first 30 days that the movie's out is called The Klansman, because the movie The Birth of a Nation was based upon the novel by the Reverend Thomas Dixon, and it was called The Klansman, and the Ku Klux Klan are the heroes of the movie. So such misconceptions about slavery don't come out of the blue. American culture has long been deeply threaded with images of Black inferiority, and even nostalgia for the social control that slavery provided. This is why I attack the negative stereotypical images of African Americans that still persist today, because the way you treat a people is largely based upon what you've been taught about a people. What you've been taught about a people is based upon what you've read, heard, and seen about a people. Okay. So we have to understand how these images impact how people see us and treat us, but also how we see ourselves as well. Power is the ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own, as Dr. Wade Noble teaches us. On the eve of the Civil War in 1861, white supremacists such as Confederate Vice President Alexander Stephens stressed that slavery would be the cornerstone of their new government. Slavery would be the cornerstone of their new government, which would be based, quote, upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery subordination to the superior race is his natural and normal condition, that slavery subordination to the superior race is his natural and normal condition, end quote. This is Alexander Stephens, okay, Vice President of the Confederacy. It was an attitude that would be continually reinforced in textbooks that have glossed over the nation's systemic violence and racism in the countless damaging cultural expressions of Blacks in entertainment, advertising, and more. The caricatures, the Uncle Ben, the Aunt Jemima, okay, the minstrel shows, 1828, 1829, T.D. Rice, Thomas Dartmouth Rice creates the minstrel shows. He becomes known as the father of the minstrel shows, and he creates the Jim Crow character. Turn around, jump around, I jump just so. Every time I turn around, I jump Jim Crow. He creates the Jim Crow character, and he puts on tattered, torn clothing, and he becomes known as the father of the minstrel shows. And the minstrel shows become the number one form of entertainment, or one of the top forms of entertainment in the country. And the minstrel shows are popular in the South and the North. Okay, the minstrel shows are popular in the South and the North. And what happens is that you're going to have other white men who see this, and the Jim Crow character, he puts on blackface also. Okay, so he puts on blackface, and he adopts a Southern dialect imitating enslaved Africans, and they portray them on stage as being dim-witted, docile, obedient. Okay, and this reinforces this stereotype of the happy slave, but it also reinforces a stereotype that African Americans cannot be independent, and they have to be cared for by white people. They have to be slaves because the South called it the peculiar institution. They call it the peculiar institution, and they said that Africans were not smart enough to take care of themselves, so they create these stereotypes to reinforce dim-witted African Americans, and that the benevolent slave master will take care of them, and they will do work on the plantation and things like this, and everybody's happy, because they said that if you don't have this system of slavery, then the Africans are going to be on their own. There's going to be havoc. They're going to rape your women. There's going to be crime, all of this. So the peculiar institution of slavery has this checks and balance system, and it makes everybody happy. This is the argument that the South is making. And also, after the Civil War ends, the South wants to bring back slavery also. This is the argument that they make again. This is one of the arguments made in the movie The Birth of a Nation, which came out on the 50th anniversary. 1915 is the 50th anniversary of the Civil War ending and the 13th Amendment and slavery ending. So they're making this argument, all hell broke loose when slavery ended. Oh no, you need to bring it back. That was a good institution. Okay, so now you're going to have T.D. Rice, then you're going to have these other these other minstrel shows, these minstrel show companies, okay, that are going to crop up as well. The Virginia Minstrels are going to be founded by Dan Emmett in 1843 in New York City. Now that's up north in New York City. And the minstrel shows, they're going to travel across the country. They're going to be up north in the South, and it's going to be hugely popular. There was an episode of the TV show The Lone Ranger, and I went through and I watched all 5 seasons of The Lone Ranger, the TV show from like the 1950s. The first 4 seasons are in black and white, and the 5th season is in color. There was one episode I remember where it was this white couple, and they're coming back. They were out on the town, and they're coming back home. They're coming back from the minstrel show. They actually say they're coming back from the minstrel show. But watching it as a child, you may not know what it is, but I saw it maybe 5-6 years ago because I was going through doing research on Bass Reeves, the legendary black lawman who is believed the character of the Lone Ranger is based upon. Okay, so I was doing research, so I'm watching it as an adult. I know exactly what they're talking about. Minstrel shows. History of the Jim Crow dance. The Jim Crow dance was a dance that started on the plantation as a result of dancing being outlawed in 1690. Now, this comes from the documentary Ethnic Notions. I'm not sure which colony they're talking about because you're dealing with colonies. You're not dealing with states in 1690 here in the U.S. You're dealing with colonies. Okay, but dancing was said to be crossing your feet by the church. So the slaves created a way of shuffling and sliding to safely glide around the laws without crossing their feet. There's a documentary called Ethnic Notions. Came out in 1986. Is narrated by Esther Roll, who was Florida Evans on Good Times. And they talk about the origins of the Jim Crow character in this documentary. There are other sources on it also. You can check the Jim Crow Museum at Ferris State University. They have they're online. Ferris State University, Jim Crow Museum. But the slaves had a saying for their cunning in skirting the law: will about and turn about and jump just so. Every time I will about, I jump Jim Crow. So this is where the Jim Crow character comes from. Okay, now if we go back quickly here, because I have to get out of here, to this piece here on happy slaves. It was an attitude that would be continually reinforced in textbooks that have glossed over the nation's systemic violence and racism, and in countless damaging cultural expressions of African Americans in entertainment, advertising, and more. Because the dehumanization of African Americans has always been entertainment for this country. We can go back to the minstrel shows. We can go back to the songs. We can go back to nursery rhymes and stories that we tell children and books and things like this. You have like Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo and things like that. You look at the origins of a lot of this. A lot of these stories they would tell their children. They have a racial connotation. In the period immediately before and just following the Civil War, benign images and paintings and illustrations presented the old plantation as a kind of orderly agrarian paradise where happy, childlike slaves were cared for by their beneficent masters. You could say benevolent masters as well. Pop culture stereotypes such as the mammy, the coon, the sambo, and the tom emerged and persisted well into the 20th century, permeating everything from advertising like Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben, not Ben Carson, but Uncle Ben Rice, okay, the box of Uncle Ben Rice, to movies, to home decor items like pictures, salt and pepper shakers, and lawn ornaments, like the black jockey lawn ornaments, which was really ridiculing African-American jockeys because African-American jockeys used to dominate horse racing. The first Kentucky Derby was ran in 1875 14 of the 15 jockeys were African-American jockeys. We used to dominate horse racing. Oliver Lewis won the first Kentucky Derby. I've done an entire lecture dealing with when black men dominated horse racing. Oliver Lewis won the first Kentucky Derby. He was 19 years old. Okay, his trainer was named Ansel Williamson. Oliver Lewis was a former slave, but also his trainer, Ansel Williamson, was an older African-American man. He was a former slave. We dominated horse racing, and there was a concerted effort to force us out of horse racing. So Jimmy Wink Wingfield was the last African-American jockey to win the Kentucky Derby. That was 1902. Jimmy Wink Wingfield. Hold on, let me pull this up. Okay. We'll go to that in just a second here. What we have here. Okay. This is Oliver Lewis. So the Kentucky Derby, which is the first of the Triple Crown races, you have the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont Stakes. Those are the three races that make up the Triple Crown. Oliver Lewis wins the Kentucky Derby, the first Kentucky Derby, May 17th, 1875. The odds were good that a black jockey would win. Yeah, the odds were very good that a black jockey would win. Let's look at when the first Kentucky Derby was ran May 17th, 1875. 13 out of 15 jockeys were African-American. Among the first 28 Derby winners, 15 were black. African-American jockeys excelled in the sport in the late 1800s, but by 1921, they had disappeared from the Kentucky Derby track. By 1921, they had disappeared from the Kentucky Derby track and would not return until Marlon St. Julian rode in the Kentucky Derby race in the year 2000. We got pushed out of horse racing. Our horses were sabotaged. There were threats against the jockeys, threats against the African-American jockeys. So we got white men became jealous of the type of money we were making, and we got pushed out of horse racing. African-American jockeys' dominance in the world of racing is a history nearly forgotten today. The participation dates back to colonial times when the British brought their love of horse racing to the New World and to the 13 colonies. Founding fathers, or as Dr. Francis Cress Wilson called them, foundling fathers, like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson frequented the track. And when President Andrew Jackson, white supremacist President Andrew Jackson, who signed the Indian Removal Act of 1830, when President Andrew Jackson moved into the White House in 1829, he brought along his best thoroughbreds and his black jockeys, because he's a slave owner also. Because racing was tremendously popular in the South, it is not surprising that the first black jockeys were African slaves. So as long as we was making money for slave owners, it was gravy. But then when we start making money for ourselves, and these guys were large, even though they were short in stature, these guys were larger than life. These guys were making some real money, and like a lot of white people got jealous of the type of fortunes they were making, and conspired against them. Okay, let's continue here. So this is a deep history, because when I hear some people say, oh, African Americans just need to try harder, it's like, wait, hold on. Y'all need to change the laws and be fairer. How about they need to? We're not the ones that need to try harder. That's our history of focusing on being twice as good and trying harder. No, you need to level the playing field and be fairer and not sabotage us. So stereotypes like Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben, movies, stereotypical movies to home decor items like pitchers, salt and pepper shakers, and lawn ornaments. Okay, that lawn ornaments of black jockeys with the lanterns. They presented African Americans as cheerful, subservient darkies with bug eyes and big lips often. Okay, so what this is doing is putting these stereotypes into the popular culture. So then it goes into people's subconscious and is ubiquitous, is everywhere. So people believe it and operate based upon these stereotypes. And oftentimes with a watermelon never too far off. Popular paternalistic depictions such as Mammy in Gone with the Wind. The movie Gone with the Wind is one of the most popular movies in history. Gone with the Wind showed slaves as faithfully devoted to their masters and helplessly dependent. This is one of the themes of The Happy Slave, showing dim-witted, docile, obedient slaves that had to be cared for by their benevolent white masters. They were too ignorant to take care of themselves. Okay, so they need us. Okay, popular paternalistic depictions such as that of Mammy in Gone with the Wind showed slaves as faithfully devoted to their masters and helplessly dependent. The consistent message: blacks were better off under white people's oversight. This was the argument the South was making, that slavery was good for everybody. They can't survive without us. They need us. We give them food and shelter, and they do chores around the house and on the plantation, and they sing songs and perform for us, and everybody's happy. They're almost like part of the family. The Reconstruction and Jim Crow eras, and Reconstruction is 1865 to 1877, and Jim Crow eras saw the emergence of an even more damaging stereotype: blacks as savage, immortal brutes. Because when you study these stereotypes, the black brute, okay, that's going to rape your women, things like this, that is not a dominant stereotype during slavery. Because the dominant stereotype during slavery is that of the happy slave. After slavery ends, then you're going to have a surge of the black brute stereotype saying we need to bring slavery back. Look at what happened when you got rid of slavery. These Negroes are going crazy. As seen in the works of authors such as Thomas Dixon, who wrote the novel Birth of a Nation, and films such as D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, these fear-mongering images of free black men presented them as predatory rapists who, once unshackled, threatened the purity and virtue of white women and needed nothing more than to be contained. Cue the Ku Klux Klan and lynch mobs, because the Klan, this is a scene from the movie The Birth of a Nation. And in the movie they show, now most of the roles of African Americans in the movie The Birth of a Nation were white people in blackface. But the movie shows there's a scene where this black man tries to rape a white female virgin. This movie calls race riots in the streets. We led protests against the movie because we knew it was detrimental to our existence. Okay. And just as you have a surge of white supremacy and things like this now, this was taking place when this movie came out. We knew that this would contribute to that. And this movie calls race riots in the streets. We led protests against the movie, like Charlotta Bass. The NAACP led protests against this movie. Charlotta Bass, who was the publisher of the California Eagle, black newspaper in California, and you have William Monroe Trotter up north in Boston. William Monroe Trotter in Boston. they're going to lead protests against this movie, okay? Because we knew the movie was detrimental to our existence. If we look at, let me see here, where is this? Where we have Trotter. Let me show this. I think we have Trotter in here. Yeah, okay, we have it here. So this is, now you can watch The Birth of a Nation on YouTube. It's 3 hours long. It's a silent movie. It has captions, so get ready. The movie promoted the happy slave image and helped rejuvenate the Ku Klux Klan. Now, TheRoot.com, and I'm not a big fan of The Root, but they do have some good articles every now and then. TheRoot.com had an article from March 1st, 2015, how Black America rallied to stop the racist film, The Birth of a Nation. How Black America rallied to stop the racist film, The Birth of a Nation. And we talked about this on Sunday show. We used to know when we were being insulted and protest against that. Today, the TV show Empire, because I've done a lecture, Empire Strikes Black, the propaganda of the media. The TV show Empire is like The Birth of a Nation. I mean, this stereotypical TV show. It's not on the air anymore, thank God. This stereotypical TV show, like The Birth of a Nation was. The NAACP led protests against the movie The Birth of a Nation, but they gave Empire NAACP Image Awards. The NAACP led protests against The Birth of a Nation in 1915, but they gave Empire NAACP Image Awards. Charlotta Bass, editor of the West Coast's oldest Black newspaper, the California Eagle, had sounded the alarm some days before in a telegram to NAACP headquarters, warning about a hideous film that was wowing white filmgoers in Los Angeles. Now, California comes into the Union in about 1849, right about 1849 or so, as a free state, okay? Because California was part of Mexico, and the U.S. gets California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Nevada as part of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo of 1848, which is the treaty that ends the Mexican-American War of 1846 to 1848. Okay, so you're looking at California coming in as a free state, and you're looking at this movie playing in Los Angeles, California. And by the way, Los Angeles, half of the people that founded Los Angeles were Afro-Mexicans. Okay, Afro-Latinos, Afro-Mexicans. When you study the origins of Los Angeles, California. Leaders of the 6-year-old New York-based organization, because the NAACP was founded in 1909, so that's 6 years old at the time. Leaders of the 6-year-old New York-based organization, led mainly by white philanthropists, sprang into action through lobbying, letter writing, and litigation. The NAACP spearheaded a campaign that for most of the rest of the year saw them and their allies in the African-American press trying to outrun the publicity juggernaut that turned the movie The Birth of a Nation into the talk of the nation. It turned The Birth of a Nation into the talk of the nation. The movie The Birth of a Nation venerated the Ku Klux Klan in a post-Civil War Armageddon in which beastly Black men, with the support of white Northern conquerors, preyed upon Southern white women, and where ignorant Black men elected into office made a mockery of governance. Because one of the things that the movie does, one, all the negative stereotypes of African Americans are depicted in the movie. Two, it shows, just as we talked about October 19th, 1870, African Americans are elected into the U.S. Congress. Okay. Well, what it did was the movie attacked African-American men who were in Congress and showed them as being ignorant, because many of them were former slaves. So a lot of white people, Democrats and Republicans, a lot of them resented these former slaves now being in Congress, voting on laws and writing laws that white people have to abide by. Okay, in U.S. Congress and in the state legislatures. October 19th, 1870, first African Americans elected to the House of Representatives. Black Republicans won 3 of the 4 congressional seats in South Carolina. Joseph H. Rainey, Robert C. DeLarge, and Robert B. Elliott. Hiram Rhodes Revels had been elected in 1869 and seated in 1870. Actually, Hiram Rhodes Revels, he's appointed by the state legislature of Mississippi, because voters are not voting for the U.S. Senate at this time. It's not until about 1913, 1914 that people start voting for the U.S. Senate. So it's going to be the Mississippi state legislature that appoints Hiram Rhodes Revels. The Reconstruction era of the United States is one of the most important, yes, misrepresented or ignored periods in history, which was one of the themes of the documentary Civil War, The Roots of Our Division on MSNBC. They talked about how very little attention traditionally has been paid in schools dealing with Reconstruction. They'll talk about slavery ending and slaves being freed and everybody lives happily ever after, but don't deal with the Reconstruction era. Though often overlooked in classrooms across the country, Reconstruction was a period where the impossible suddenly became possible. But then white supremacy reared its ugly head and said, not today. Then white supremacy reared its ugly head and said, not today. So we said, we're going to come back, and this is not over with. Okay, read this piece here from history.com. The most damaging myths about slavery debunked by Uhuru Williams. It's a brilliant historian, Uhuru Williams. The most damaging myths about slavery debunked. This is from history.com, official website of the History Channel. And when you read the article, you don't get my commentary. I think it's much better with my commentary and historical analysis, but okay. This is what we're going to do. The piece here on, we're going to look at this here from Zen Education Project dealing with, we'll look at this very, very quickly. We'll talk about this some more tomorrow. October 25th is the anniversary of the St. Bernard Parish Massacre in Louisiana. Okay, 1868. Now, you know you had the Opelousas Massacre in 1868 in Louisiana as well. All right, but let's look at this very quickly. We'll talk about this some more tomorrow. All right. Who still needs to register for the 10-week online course that I teach on Saturdays from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968? Let me know, because we'll post a link here. And it's also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So you can register for that and start watching the content. You'll be ready for class this Saturday. Let me post this. And then we have some bonus information there as well. How you doing, Fly Girl? She said, when I was an undergraduate in college, I had a chance to see the original Birth of a Nation. And yes, it shows black men in Congress drinking and the birth of the KKK. Yeah, it shows them eating fried chicken. Shows them eating fried chicken sitting in Congress. It shows all these negative stereotypical images. It's designed to dehumanize them. Okay, and it dehumanizes African-American congressmen, it shows them as dim-witted, things like this. So, okay, so we got to vote them out of office. We can't have this. And you have the end of the movie, the Ku Klux Klan puts down a revolt by former Union Negro soldiers, and the Klan saves the nation. The Ku Klux Klan saves the nation. Okay, and they say this is the birth of a nation. The Ku Klux Klan are the saviors. They're the heroes. The movie was so popular that in newspapers where there were ads for the movie The Birth of a Nation, the Ku Klux Klan would oftentimes take out recruiting ads in the newspaper next to the ad for the movie The Birth of a Nation. This is how the movie helped rejuvenate the Klan. Okay, if we look at this here, this is dealing with the St. Bernard Parish massacre. We'll look at this very quickly. October 25th, 1868, today's the anniversary. Following the Civil War, as freedmen gained the right to vote, former slaves, as freedmen gained the right to vote, white Democrats of the St. Bernard Parish in Louisiana and throughout the South were afraid of losing their majority and thus their power to thwart Reconstruction efforts. Now, what we're going to see during Reconstruction is we're going to see political violence inflicted upon African Americans, but the parties have switched now. Now the party inflicting the political violence are the Republicans. The party of the domestic terrorists, the party of the white nationalists is now the Republicans. In the January 6th insurrection is a continuation of the U.S. Civil War. The January 6th insurrection is a continuation of the U.S. Civil War, and you have to understand the party realignment that takes place beginning with the Lily White movement in 1928, and the party realignment that takes place is not just African Americans switching from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. It's a lot of Southern segregationist Democrats leaving the Democratic Party going to the Republican Party, like Strom Thurmond. And others are going to be defeated and ran out of Congress, and others die, things like this. But you have a party realignment. It's not just African Americans switching from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. It's also white people switching. What the segregationists, many of them are going to go to the Republican Party. Now, in late October of 1868, armed groups of white men mobilized to suppress the recently emancipated voters in the hopes of regaining their way of life, turned upside down by the Civil War and Reconstruction. It was just days before the presidential election between President Ulysses S. Grant and Horatio Seymour, Ulysses S. Grant and Horatio Seymour, which would decide the fate of Reconstruction in the South. On October 25th, 1868, the first blood spilled of the St. Bernard Parish, massacre. Days later, former slave freedman Lewis Wilson was struck down from his horse and thrown in a makeshift prison by a group of white Democratic vigilantes. Freed people were dragged from their homes and murdered in cold blood. The reported numbers of those killed varies from 35 to over 100. Many who escaped did so by fleeing to sugarcane fields, where they hid for days. Over 60 freed people were arrested after the atrocities, while not a single white perpetrator was questioned. While the gruesome nature of the tragedy was swept under the rug, the implications reverberated throughout the South for generations. Ulysses S. Grant received only one vote in the St. Bernard Parish as Seymour swept the state. As historian C. Rodrigue puts it, Republicans captured the presidency in 1868, but white terror carried the day in Louisiana. Republicans carried the presidency in 1868, but white terror carried the day in Louisiana. Despite the federal investigation, no one was arrested for the killing of freed African Americans. African-American survivors identified white neighbors as their assailants, but no justice was sought. Instead, more than 60 freed African-Americans were arrested by local authorities and vigilantes for the killing of Pablo San Feliu, F-E-L-I-U. Over time, the massacre faded in obscurity. To this day, its only physical reminder is the tombstone of Pablo San Feliu, located in St. Bernard Cemetery, which reads, Pablo San Feliu, assassinated by slaves, incited by carpetbag rule, died October 1869. Okay, and this is a picture of the tombstone. So they're blaming the slaves. Oftentimes we got blamed for these massacres and things like this taking place. We weren't the ones that started these. There's some cases where we're defending ourselves. But we ain't the ones that started this. Sees on San Feliu's tombstone misrepresent the circumstances surrounding the death. The incorrect date suggests that it was erected a significant amount of time after the massacre, perhaps memorializing his death as if he were a martyr. The engraver referred to the freed people as slaves, but this is after slavery ended. The engraver referred to the freed people as slaves, most importantly, by placing blame on carpetbaggers. The derogatory term applied to Northerners and outsiders who migrated to the South during Reconstruction. Okay, they were called carpetbaggers. The inscription implies that San Feliu was an innocent murder victim. But so they said that they were killed by slaves, but this is 1868. It's after slavery ends. The entry was prepared by St. Bernard Parish High School teacher Chris Dyer on the 150th anniversary of the massacre. Dyer is the author of Unraveling a Forgotten Massacre in My Louisiana Hometown. A history teacher discovers a racially driven rampage that still haunts his students' lives. Okay, a history teacher discovers a racially driven rampage that still haunts his teachers' lives. And also the 1868 St. Bernard Parish Massacre, Blood in the Cane Fields by History Press. Okay, read the rest of this here. We may talk a little bit about this some more tomorrow. But this is the St. Bernard Parish Massacre in Louisiana. Took place October 25th, 1868. Who has never heard of this before? Took place October 25th, 1868, during Reconstruction. All right. Let's see here. Be sure to register for the 10-week online course I teach on Saturdays from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And then we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived. You can watch it anytime. You can use it with your children also. I would say the content is PG-13. You can use it with your children. It's visual. It's very visual. And then also on Sundays, we teach 12 noon to 2 p.m. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, so that's at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Now, all of my DVD lectures and digital downloads are also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And we have this bundle pack here, the Michael Imhotep Black History Month DVD bundle pack. There's 15 of my lectures on all different topics. Okay, 15 of my lectures on all different topics. And we've got everything from dealing with the film Black Panther. It's almost 3-hour lecture I have dealing with the film Black Panther to we have it on the origins of the real history of African American History Month, and Dr. Carter G. Woodson. We've got it on the distortion of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The revolutionary will not be televised on the television. We've got one dealing with Malcolm X and why is he still relevant. This one here deals with the history of the Three-Fifths Compromise, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution, the Three-Fifths Compromise, and the history of the Electoral College. This one is really good for entrepreneurs. 13 forms of wealth, redistributing the pain, keys to economic empowerment and entrepreneurship for African Americans, because I taught entrepreneurship for 7 years. My degree's in business administration. The racist history of the white national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance. So I deal with the history of the national anthem, written by Francis Scott Key, September 1814, during the War of 1812. And deal with the origins of the Pledge of Allegiance, written in 1892 by Francis Bellamy, white Methodist minister who was a socialist, by the way, Francis Bellamy. And then I tie all that into Colin Kaepernick's protests. This one here is a double lecture I did with Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. This is a 4-hour lecture here, redistributing the pain, how African Americans historically fought back with economic boycott. So in this lecture, I show actual historic examples of us using different types of economic withdrawal strategies to fight back against white supremacy. You get great African women in history, the mothers of civilization. Also, it's a 4-hour. This one here is actually 4 hours. A 2 DVD set. It's actually 4 hours. So I deal with some well-known and not so well-known African women in our history from all different time periods. And then also you get this one here. This is a 3-hour lecture I did, Ancient Kemet, the Winter Solstice and the History of Christmas. Ancient Kemet, the Winter Solstice and the History of Christmas. This is not even all of the lectures. It shows all of them when you go here to it on the website. So we deal with the origin, the pre-Christian origins of Christmas. Going back to, and trace this also back to ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, the ancient Egyptian influence, but we deal with the Roman festival of Saturnalia, the Persian festival of Mithra, all of that. Okay, you can buy these individually, or you can buy them in the bundle pack. Okay, that's at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right. We just posted a link here for the 15 DVD bundle pack. But if you visit our website, we have it there on the home page. And then when you click on the link for the bundle pack, it shows the individual lectures as well. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And also, if you want to advertise with the African History Network, email us at AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. If you want to advertise with the African History Network, current promotion: buy 1 month, get 2 months free. African American business owners. And we take your 30-second and 60-second commercial. We put it into the audio podcast of our shows, and then also when we rebroadcast these shows, the video version of these shows, your commercial will be there as well in the video version of the show. We broadcast them on our social media platforms. If you don't have a video commercial, we can create one for you, no additional charge. Email us at AHNshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. A current promotion, buy 1 month and get 2 months free. All right, remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.
On Purpose Television Network. Yes, Black on Purpose Television Network. All black, all positive, all the time. The largest black-owned streaming television network in the world. Bringing our people together worldwide. Controlling our messages, our story, our way. Black TV the way it should be. Black music, Black history, and more. 30 plus channels, thousands of shows. Black on Purpose Television Network. Subscribe now.
Gain knowledge in minutes from insightful summaries of progressive and socially conscious books. Blacklisted gives you access to curated content that'll satisfy your curiosity to learn and understand different perspectives. Empower yourself through inspirational and actionable ideas. It's easy to read or listen to on the go. Blacklisted. Empower yourself. Start your free trial today.
For 25 years, the Black History 101 Mobile Museum has carried on the rich legacy of the Black Museum movement in America by showcasing original artifacts of the Black experience at colleges, universities, K-12 schools, corporations, libraries, conferences, and cultural events, making it the most traversed Black History mobile exhibit in American history. Dr. Khalid El Hakim is the founder of the Black History 101 Mobile Museum, and he is a highly sought-after public speaker on topics of Black history, social studies, education, museum studies, hip-hop, and race relations. Dr. Khalid was named among the change makers for NBC Universal's Erase the Hate campaign and listed as one of the 100 men of distinction for Black enterprise. He recently founded the Michigan Hip Hop Archive on the campus of Western Michigan University. The Black History 101 Mobile Museum is currently scheduling in-person and virtual exhibits nationwide. For more information, please contact Dr. Khalid El Hakim directly at 313-645-4197, 313-645-4197, or visit their website at blackhistorymobilemuseum.com. That's blackhistorymobilemuseum.com. You can also email him at bhistory101@yahoo.com, bhistory101@yahoo.com. All right, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.